Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. And welcome, my friends, to Secret Origins Month. This is the time every November where I talk about the first appearances of popular characters in comics. Or at least characters you might have heard of. We're starting things off with the last member of the original Justice League lineup I haven't covered yet. The Martian Manhunter. While the character isn't as well known as, say, Batman or the Flash, the Martian Manhunter has gotten a little more mainstream knowledge thanks to various TV appearances. J'onn J'onzz is basically the heart and soul of the team, their coordinator, conscience, and has led it more than once. And yet, strangely, I can find nothing about the whys and hows of his creation. Sure, I know who are his creators, Joseph Samixon and artist Joe Certa, but the actual details explaining the Martian Manhunter's creation remain unknown to me. Couldn't find any interviews with Samixon about it. I suppose it's because comics weren't really his main thing. While he was an author by trade of science fiction works, he was also an actual honest-to-God scientist with a degree in chemistry and would frequently submit papers to scientific journals. The Martian Manhunter himself stayed a backup feature in Detective Comics for years, apparently popular enough to warrant inclusion in the Justice League of America once the book was launched, though interestingly, he didn't really start as a superhero, but as, well, a detective in Detective Comics, just with a sci-fi twist. So let's dig into Detective Comics number 225 and see what we can learn about the Manhunter from Mars.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a pretty hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazon and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
Since Detective Comics is really just Batman's book, the cover doesn't really have anything to do with the Martian Manhunter, save for a title on top announcing the new feature of the book. So let's just skip it and get into the story proper. The Strange Experiment of Dr. Odell. Some men might wonder if squirrels enhance the taste of Jell-O, but only Dr. Odell had the will to actually experiment with it. You've seen all sort of detectives in action. FBI agents, private eyes, treasury men, and yet none of them can find my keys. But here, for the first time anywhere, is the most unusual of them all. A sleuth from out of this world! I don't know, seems like that's not the case, but I have no way of really checking that. Anyway, the preview title panel here features our Martian Manhunter in disguise as he looks at a police lineup. But how do you know the suspect has a scar on his wrist and a laundry mark in his clothes that gives him away? You've never seen him before, and you've only been on the force 24 hours. It's just that I know. I can tell you no more. So, the evidence is inadmissible then. We truly start with the aforementioned Dr. Odell in his laboratory. In his observatory lab, Professor Mark Odell, world-famous scientist, works over a strange, humming contraption, dotted with twinkling lights. The Christmas lights didn't actually do anything for his science, but he liked the aesthetic. At last, I've built the robot brain of the century. With this invention, I can explore the cosmos, probe other dimensions. Now, to test it.
Quit throwing your garbage into our dimension.
I wonder, really wonder, what frontier the robot brain will reach when I push this button. Here goes! This is back in the days when science didn't have any real goals or point to it. They just invented interdimensional devices with robot brains and shouted, "Hold my test tube full of beer!" We get another demonstration of this as he turns on his device and isn't even sure what the hell the robot brain is doing. There, it's in operation. This is an historic moment. Will the robot brain reach into space, time, or the fourth dimension? To his disappointment, he had actually invented a coffee maker. And not a very good one. For long moments, the robot brain crackles and buzzes.
Did he have a malfunction in his robot brain?
And with a flash of light, the Martian Manhunter appears. The robot brain! Look what it brought! An alien being! And given his clothes, it seems he was in the middle of an S&M session. I read your mind well, Earthman, and I understand your every thought and word. And you should be very ashamed of your browser history, Earthman. What have I wrought? What has the brain done? Who knew randomly activating a device whose function I didn't fully understand despite inventing it could have bad consequences? Our green friend introduces himself as John Jones and asks for an explanation for what the hell's going on. Dr. Odell explains about the machine, and Jean asks to be returned to Mars, but apparently the dude only bothered to invent a device that could take stuff and not return it. The reprogramming necessary to alter the device could take years. You meant no harm. I realize that. Very rare to see someone who is abducted from another planet who wants to go home, but the inability to do so is met with, well, that's a bummer. Thanks anyway, man. Since he's going to be stuck on Earth for a while, Jean realizes he needs to alter his appearance to better live on Earth without shocking them, demonstrating his shape-shifting powers. You changed right in front of my eyes! On Earth, such a thing is impossible! But on my planet, every inhabitant has such chameleon-like powers. Now, I am like any other person on Earth. How did you know that other people would look like me? And that's a regular business suit. How did you know that people dress like that and not like my Colonel Sanders scientist gear? Well, wait, how do you know what a chameleon is? Okay, look, we've been secretly invading your planet with our shape-shifting powers for years now. Oh, you're Skrulls. Yeah, wait, who? Yeah, he probably just read his mind. It just seems odd that he was able to assimilate that much information about Earth from a single mind reading. Unfortunately, Dr. Odell chooses now is the best time to have a heart attack, because all of this has been such a shock to his system. He even admits to knowing for years that he had a weak heart. Maybe would have been a good idea to hire a lab assistant then, Doc, just in case Cthulhu or whatever the hell you grabbed from another dimension proved too much for ya. If I could only reach the Zymo serum in my lab, it could save your heart. Turns out that's just the Martian version of Mountain Dew. Jean is really thirsty. Dr. Odell laments that he can't send him back and that he's unintentionally made him a prisoner on Earth. I'm guessing there isn't enough time for an ambulance to get there, but yeah, with Odell dead and the Martian space program still a while off from completion, it could take a long time for him to be rescued or get off the planet. He takes a trench coat from Dr. Odell's closet and decides to anglicize his name as John Jones. Now to begin my new adventures. The first place he goes to is a nearby seashore. Day one of new adventures, Earth's beaches have a lot more medical waste on them than on Mars. In these early comics, Jean apparently had the ability to extract particles from objects, so he's able to get friggin' gold from the water. Of course! Don't you know anything about science? In the days that follow, Jean travels around Earth to explore it. Unlike on Mars, so many of the denizens here live in a small area that they build their structures into the skies. Those weirdo humans taking advantage of vertical space. The Arch of Triumph, a monument to victory in war. Mars saw its last war 1,000 years ago, and our monuments to it are much shorter to the ground. Look at their ancient wheeled vehicles, hundreds of them, crawling along the same streets where people walk. Yeah, look at them! Jean, who are you talking to? In another century or two, this will all be changed.
But where are the flying cars? I was promised flying cars. I don't see any flying cars.
Those two last ones make Jean seem like the grown-up version of that kid from Gamera vs. Giran who wants a world without war or traffic accidents. He walks up to a newsstand. Earth is far behind Mars in many ways, but that is natural, since it's a younger planet. Our trashy magazine technology is centuries ahead of theirs. He talks about how there isn't any crime on Mars, that their advanced science made crime obsolete. Only a science major can wipe out crime. He decides that while he's on Earth, he can help do something about all the crime. So naturally, since we already established that he was a scientist, I mean, why else would he have a lab on Mars, he helps the humans invent new, cheaper technologies that can wipe out a lot of the social issues that cause crime. Nah, I'm screwing with you. He goes to a police station to try to become a detective. So, you want to be a detective, eh? You and who else? All right, Buster, I'll send you up to Lieutenant Saunders. He's in charge of detectives. Wow, law enforcement will apparently take on anyone who walks in off the street. No wonder Gotham had such a crime problem. This was also in the days when people would smoke everywhere, so the guy at the desk lights up a match and Jean thinks to himself about how that's his weakness. Fire, the enemy of all Martians. On Mars, making s'mores is the ultimate perversion. I can do many things that Earthmen can't do, but I am vulnerable to flame. It is my one weakness, unlike a human being who is perfectly fine if you set them on fire. And thus at the Chief of Detectives office, he says John Jones can start on the force tomorrow. I mean, yeah, it says much later, but that could be anywhere from 3 hours later to years and years from now. And if it is any major amount of time later, it seems odd that he's still wearing the same clothes. And so our story ends with the chief thinking that he's got an interesting case for him right away. I'm wondering just how this rookie will make out. Sir, I can read your mind. That is sexual harassment, and I don't have to take it. Don't miss the next issue of Detective Comics for the first case tackled by the Manhunter from Mars. The case of the magic baseball. The Sandlot franchise went in some weird directions. This origin story is not great. The idea of his accidental transportation from Mars to Earth is fine. A little clunky in that Silver Age kind of way, but its ridiculousness is charming. The problem is that half this thing is just the Martian Manhunter going around comparing stuff to Mars, and then he just decides to become a detective, and boom, instant crime fighter. We don't actually get to see a lot of his powers and how useful they'll be in his activities, just quick demonstrations of mind reading, shape-shifting, and being able to pass through solid objects. Also, he can make gold from the water through sheer force of will. It feels like only the beginning of a story, but lacks an actual ending or follow-through. Admittedly, it's only 6 pages, so there's not much we can really tell in that amount of time, but it feels like we should have something more interesting than, I will join the police. Well, that was easy. A lot of the details of this would get revised over the years. Whether Odell died, whether the Martian civilization was still alive, Odell's family, all that. But the overall idea of him being transported to Earth and imitating a human would remain. In particular, adding in an aspect of alienation from human society because of, well, not being human. For now, though, it just feels like it ends too soon. Next time, we jump ahead to the modern age for another villain origin. This was also in the days when people would smoke everywhere, so the guy at the desk lights up a match and Jean thinks to himself about how that's his weakness. Cigarettes, the enemy of all Martians! Hello my friends, please be sure to like this video, subscribe, hit the bell, and share it with others. And if you get a chance, maybe check out my Patreon.